Pecha Kucha 311, starting compositional storyboard. So this is the first week of me trying to do the final storyboard for my comic, which has all the angles. It has the composition of the panels. It's got all the speech. So then I just kind of trace this with a better pen. It's also the week I read Bone, which is over 1,000 pages long. It's a really thick book. I didn't really want to scan the internals of it, so I'm kind of just talking about it in passing. It was made in the 90s, and it feels innocent, like an old Disney movie, but it's also an epic adventure, which appeals to people of all ages. It's got an excellent sense of humor, with a wonderfully simple but artistically valuable style. It's a winner of many, many awards. I read a random issue of it in a library, and I knew I needed to read the whole thing. I can't really recommend it enough. But enough about that. Let's talk about something I could scan. I've never really read Doctor Strange. They made some movies recently, but this is an old, early 2000s reboot of Doctor Strange. I just picked it up blind from a comic book store way back when. It's the retelling of the origin of the character, which probably doesn't deviate an awful lot from any other version of Doctor Strange. He starts off as a jaded professional doctor who, in this version, goes to Tibet and is one of those help the poor, travel the world kind of doctors, but then he eventually becomes like a plastic surgeon, conceited dude. And then one day he decides to go skiing in the Alps in the middle of the night, gets in a horrible crash, breaks his hands, can't be a doctor anymore, and this is what kind of sets his life on him becoming the magical mystic Marvel Doctor Strange, a doctor of a different type. The only real variation between this and any other version of the Doctor is that he's less iconic looking. They put him in a big red trench coat, which looks cool in a this is the Matrix kind of way, but Doctor Strange is one of those dudes who's more interesting the more peculiar he is. But I don't dislike it as a book. It's stable, but it's not a postmodernist thing. I also had another look at my copy of Loki, which is fully painted and is one of the few hardback comic books I have, which I think is probably worth being a higher quality premium artifact. It's the story of Loki having through events that are not discussed, having successfully conquered Asgard, deposed his father, and Thor is brought to him in chains at the start, and it's really Loki coping very badly with being the guy in charge. Because it's from his perspective, he's constantly trying to justify all the shady things he's done, like in his many interactions with kind of the Thor cast, including Thor's girlfriend, where she makes the counter arguments that prove that no matter what circumstance, Loki is always going to find a way to screw things up and be disingenuous, which is further reinforced by his relationship with his co-conspirators in his uprising, who he doesn't really seem to want to honour the bargains that they've struck that enabled him to win however he won. But I think it's a great book to read, and it's a great book to look at. So what did I actually manage to accomplish this week? Well, what I'm trying to do with my current storyboard is bring together all the research I've done to effectively get as close as I can to my final draft without being tied up on the brush usage, vector, line work and stuff like that. I'm flipping through like 5 or 6 manga books I've just got at hand, like a copy of Naruto and Bleach, and I'm just trying to pick up little things that I wouldn't really have thought about, like the shape of speech balloons and panel layout as it relates to the bleed of a page in manga, just casually across the board. So as I'm trying to squeeze the images, the composition, and the words together, there's definitely growing pains. Even in panels where I don't think there are too many words, like on the middle of the right, of here, which I've zoomed in on, it's difficult to fit the words in and still find room for the image, even when the image isn't supposed to be that complicated. I'm far more interested at this point in ironing out these details before I worry about finalizing the visual aesthetic of the manga characters, which is also a part of this final draft. You know, on the right hand side of this double page spread, like I probably had too many panels, so I can't really do a lot of concise storytelling in each panel, which is, you know, these are the real problems I face trying to make all of this fit, because I've probably tried to fit too much in too little a space. In the anticipation it was going to be a complicated week of this kind of stuff, I kind of just got a pen, drew like a I don't know, 50-second sketch of Bison, and then just wanted to kind of give it some kind of like watercolor wash thing. So it's like one of those pictures you'd see in a newspaper back when, you know, people read newspapers and they had little cartoon joke things. It turned out better than I thought it would for 60 seconds of effort. That's always the way, you know. It's taken me a year to do this book, and it's a mess. But, you know, I've also, you know, as a result of seeing like a couple of episodes of season 6, which makes a ton of callbacks to pretty much every other season of Rick and Morty, it's kind of made me start going back and watch older Rick and Morty episodes. I just finished watching season 1 again, and I think it's distinctly worth pointing out, in the pilot, Rick is a very different version of himself, in which he clearly makes decisions that don't appear to be particularly rational, but are hilarious watching the consequences thereof, which ultimately culminate in Morty having like a seizure on the floor at the end of the first episode, where, you know, Rick famously goes on a rant that makes no sense for about 5 times longer than he should about 100 years Rick and Morty, 10 seasons Rick and Morty, we're going to go on adventures, Morty, indefinitely until, you know, the credits roll. So yeah, while I didn't do what I thought I was going to do this week in terms of quantity, because I don't want to spend another several months getting through this storyboard, I've managed to start move in the right direction, but it's definitely an uphill struggle. And the only reason I've even got as far as I have is because I make these slideshows and tell YouTube, because I know no one actually watches these things, that, you know, here's what I tried to do to not completely fuck the week. So this is why I'm on my 311th of these things, because they really are one of the best methods I've found of getting me to commit, at least to some extent, to living my best life and trying to use my limited talents at present to achieve some valuable goal. So you can expect to see a lot more of these. And I'll see you next time.